G'day and thanks for joining us. Today is Saturday the 13th of March and this is Australia Unshackled, Defeating the British Empire. My name's Glenn and this is Catherine. And today we're bringing you a very special and optimistic report from the United States. On March 2nd, just last week, Keisha Rogers, a member of the LaRouche Youth Movement and an organizer with the LaRouche Political Action Committee, has over the last several months run a campaign in Texas for the 22nd Congressional District, running in the Democratic Party to contest the election coming up in November of this year on the basis of saving the United States. Now, what happened in this election is Keisha won. With an overwhelming vote of 53%, she fought a very hard campaign and won on the basis of impeaching Obama and saving NASA. And as you may have heard in our previous report, Obama's commitment at the moment is to cutting the budget to the bone, removing the funds that are going towards a Moon-Mars mission for NASA, and this has enraged the population. So we're going to play for you right now a report that came from Lyndon LaRouche on this historic victory by Keisha Rogers in Texas, and we'll have a discussion about that after you see this clip.
This morning, on the morning after the victory by Keisha Rogers in the 22nd Congressional District in Texas, I made a statement entitled Keisha's Victory, which some people think, as I agree, may be better understood by hearing it on this medium than by reading it as bald text. The paper's entitled Keisha's Victory. This time, but not usually, landslide was really an honest name for it. Ordinarily, a margin of victory of less than 55% of the vote cast in a Democratic congressional primary campaign is not really a landslide victory. To some, it sounds nice to say it on election night. Sometimes people can bring themselves to repeat it was a landslide, even on the morning after. The case of the just selected Democratic congressional candidate, Keisha Rogers' victory in the 22nd District in Texas, breaks all such rules. She won in a hard-fought election, which she won, in fact, as what she had declared to be her impeachment campaign against the incumbent U.S. President Barack Obama. Last night, President Obama just lost Texas. She had said impeach him, loud and clear, and that is what really happened in Texas yesterday morning. Today, impeachment will soon begin to echo from around the world. Yet, for what is perhaps a brief moment, even on the morning after still today, the present congressional leadership of both parties still does not understand what is going on. Forces beyond their comprehension are in play. The pillars of the Philistines' political temple have just been pulled down. Somewhere, the voice of the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley is heard laughing with joy, for in fact, in times like these, great and growing numbers of the people are compelled to serve the power which is seated on the throne of their own soul. There is a true mass strike in motion in many parts of the world, none more clearly than in our own USA. Powers among us, powers beyond the comprehension of those who have been considered our usual financial and political powers, are at work, powers which Shelley named the unacknowledged legislators of the world. There's a great mass movement gathering out there, a new great moral power on this planet in the likeness of those great social upheavals which have been the true menace to tyrannies in the past. That growing mass of those among our citizens who are the mass movement, which has been growing since August 2009, gathering against the present Obama presidency, are mobilized in a desperate effort to save themselves and this nation from the ugliest echoes of the Adolf Hitler tradition, as typified by the global financial power of what has been known as the Inter-Alpha Group, a group of evil which has now seemingly suddenly been transformed into trash, even before the astonished eyes of that pack of global predators which they are. That, in fact, is the gathering storm of political forces which are already at the verge of retiring President Barack Obama from office now. During the early days and later, after the December 7th, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, the theme presented for our purpose of mobilizing the consciousness of our patriotic citizenry was a series of films and light productions titled Why We Fight. All of the young fellows like me who recall that experience of that time will probably recall that clearly today, even when some other notable things have been forgotten. The alert and better informed patriots among us will recognize that which threatens to destroy not only our own nation, but our civilization today, is typified by that same enemy who places all civilization in peril today, the forces now gathered around the Inter-Alpha Group. These are the fascist circles controlling the Obama presidency from London. Those are the international financier circles of today who fill the shoes today of those London-centered financial circles who brought us the Hitler regime and World War II then. It is against that our patriots are reacting today when they rally to vote against what they regard as the strangely alien force of the inner circles controlling the Nero-like puppet President Obama today. For our patriotic citizens, generally, the issue is we want our republic back.
Now you can hear the rest of Mr. Lyndon LaRouche's remarks on Keisha's victory on the website larouchepack.com. But many of you will be asking, what is the significance of this victory for Australia? Well, simply stated, this victory by Keisha Rogers in Texas represents a defeat for the British Empire. It puts the British Empire on the back foot and puts the impeachment of Obama squarely on the table. Now, as we have documented very clearly, Barack Obama is effectively a British agent destroying the United States from within through his policies of taking down NASA and the Nazi healthcare policies. And that was really captured by what Keisha's campaign really zeroed in on.
Yeah, exactly. You had actually this guy called Doug Blake who was running against Keisha. And as you could see in the polls were Keisha 52%, and the other guys 27% for Doug Blatt, and this other guy 20%. And, you know, it was considerably, obviously, a landslide. It was no accident that they voted for these policies to impeach Obama. Our campaign slogan was Save NASA, Impeach Obama, and Vote Keisha.
Certainly didn't pull her punches.
No, not at all.
Out there in organising on the street and talking to people.
No, not at all. She was. This was everywhere. Went all over the place, and you know, you're probably getting photos up on the screen right now. But yeah, it was very blatant. And the guy Doug Blatt came out and said, "Well, I'm sorry that I didn't win. I just don't think people actually did their research on who they were actually voting for." And, you know, it's actually the fact that he's not really a reality, because the reason he didn't get elected was he was kissing the bum of President Obama by saying that we wouldn't go against the president. And, you know, frankly, if you're a Democrat, you should kiss, you know, whatever the Democrats happen to be saying and conform with them. And that's what he was doing. And the people were like, well, no, we need a real change. Obama doesn't represent that. And we agree with Keisha, who should be impeached. So, yeah, it is a really big thing for this country in Australia because it's a hit against the British Empire. From the standpoint that if civilization is to survive, you need to get rid of the President of the United States, which is Barack Obama. Because you need the President to actually be able to negotiate and collaborate with Russia, China and India, and hence the other countries, so that we can get a new financial system. So the president's got to go, and the people, it's obvious that they want him to go too.
Yeah, when Keisha was was interviewed by one of the local newspapers following her victory in Texas, her comment was simply in response to, what are your thoughts on the response from the Democratic Party to your victory here in Texas? She said, quote, "I don't care what the Democratic Party hacks have to say. I'm fighting a war against the British Empire."
This is like if you were to die and then be remembered, what quote would you be remembered for? This quote is being put all over the internet and the blogs and all over the place. It was a quote of the day, and that was actually on the side, and it was Keisha Rogers, this quote. And this quote has actually had a huge effect on The Economist magazine, which happens to be, in the hub. Mouthpiece, yep, and in the hub of the British Empire. And they titled their headline for this newspaper article saying, "America declares war on the British Empire." All jokes aside, they mean it, because they're not stupid. They know what the stakes are at, and the fact that LaRouche won the Democratic seat to actually run against another congressman to potentially get into Congress. Whether Keisha gets in or not, the battle has been won from the standpoint that the people have spoken with what they want as a policy. And the people are launching a war against the British Empire. So,
and that's what's captured by, what Doug Blatt was saying, that the people were too uninformed to know what they were voting for.
What a joke.
Is completely insane.
Does he think that the people are obviously illiterate because they can't read Save NASA, Impeach Obama, Vote Keisha? Right. He's calling them illiterate because, this was everywhere. It was all over the streets. It was in your face. If you didn't know what Keisha was doing, you obviously haven't been out in the streets to go shopping.
And what it also points to is a lack of, the clear understanding of the population going back to what actually broke out last August in the United States, a true mass strike dynamic. Now, as LaRouche was talking about Shelley, there was a distinct dynamic change in the population going back last year, where they realized that they had been betrayed by their leadership, and that nothing coming from Washington, D.C. or their president was going to save them from the complete economic crisis and no future that they had found themselves in. And that is the true reaction and response in the population. It started with the mass demonstrations all around the United States at these town hall meetings. It then became mass rallies in Washington, D.C. And
against the President of the United States. And then also it became a situation where Brown, this Republican, who was right down in the polls, something like 30%, and he said, well, I'm against this healthcare bill. And the other woman, who was a Democrat, said, well, I'm not. I'm for the healthcare bill. And so all of a sudden you had this turn in the polls, and Brown won the seat because he was actually against the policies of what the president was initiating. And if you look deep enough into these policies, they're British implemented.
Yeah.
Which is why the American people are saying, get rid of this British puppet. Because they smell it in the United States. They have a sense of patriotism.
Just to add to that this was also in the bluest of, democratic states in the United States, Massachusetts, which had been under the seat had belonged to Edward Kennedy, who was pro-healthcare bill and was considered one of the heavyweights in the Democratic Party. The fact that the population responded by putting in a Republican there was a sign to Obama that he had to change his policy, and he's ignored that. So,
and then the fact that Keisha's come along with some real leadership to say impeach the president, and she's won overwhelmingly. You would think that somebody that actually, in their normal right mind would actually go, oh, well, this is, I've had so many warnings, this is the last straw to actually change my ways. But, as Lynn has actually documented, we are dealing with a narcissistic president, which is, it was a good tool for the British Empire, but now it's starting to backfire.
One of the things that this victory also opens the door on, not just the loud message globally for Obama's impeachment or removal from office to save the United States, but also the impetus to return to a commitment, the United States to return to a commitment for a real science technology program which is centered on NASA. Now, the program that Obama wanted to cut, the Constellation program, this really...
Which, mind you, it seems like just a small part of NASA, which is the Constellation program. But if you cut the Constellation program, you're basically cutting NASA anyway. So you may as well say goodbye to a space program in general.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like much, but it is. It's the whole. You're saying goodbye to NASA. Yeah.
And this victory has actually now, as you'll see on the LaRouche PAC website, the LaRouche Youth Movement and our organisers are now going out there showing that this victory actually opens the door for a real, true future orientation to colonise the moon, to go to Mars as the future policy for humanity. That this is not going to be cut, and the American people will not allow this to be cut. What the American population understand is that Obama is not really like the Democratic Party used to be, where you had people like John F. Kennedy, you had people like Franklin Roosevelt, who were committed to these kinds of optimistic, future-based programs of development.
And committed to the general welfare.
Right. And so this really is a victory for the United States population. And from here on, I mean, it's really a question of what can be done to further that victory by putting LaRouche's proposals for a new economic system on the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of which, we're going to be tuning in, and I hope you can tune in as well, to Lyndon LaRouche's webcast. LaRouche will speak tomorrow. He's going to be giving a webcast with the title The Ides of March 2010, specifically speaking about Obama. Must beware the Ides of March, because there's right now a move there's people in the institutions that are looking to get rid of this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Because now that they've seen that, people actually want the impeachment of Obama by voting for Keisha. They're now starting to come out of their holes and say, oh, well, we're for this too. But we were just too scared to say it publicly.
Yeah. And so, this is the optimistic plans and also the proposals to get us out of this economic crisis. It's what LaRouche is going to take up tomorrow in his webcast. That will be available on the LaRouche PAC website, and also available on this website, cecaust.com.au. And that will be shown live at 5 a.m. Australian Eastern Time tomorrow, but it will be archived on the website after that. So I encourage you to tune into that and hear what LaRouche has to say of the what must be done next. And thanks for joining us this Saturday, the 13th of March. This has been Australia Unshackled, defeating the British Empire. We'll see you later.
See ya.
You are each responsible, not merely for the deed you do, or also what you fail to do, but rather you are accountable for the outcome of what you have chosen to be or not to be. You are each accountable for the consequence of what you have chosen to contribute to setting into motion, or failing to do a necessary, reasonably foreseeable act which it is within your means to provide. In the final analysis, it is the consequence which is absolutely true. I had to believe this was true at the time. Is ultimately no excuse. It is not the plausible intent, but the effect of your actions and your reflections on the consequence of your actions, for which you will be eternally, morally responsible in the eyes of future history, whatever excuse you might concoct as a whimpering effort to distract attention from your crimes. Simply doing nothing when something is possible and obligatory is, I have a right to my own opinion, the commonplace expression of an essential form of common crime.